911 trying to go with the emergency.
My dad is injured on the ground. I don't know what's happened, but can you please send an ambulance or something?
Okay, where are you located?
679 Lorraine Street.
Say it again?
679 Lorraine Street.
679 Marine Street?
Yes.
Okay, is he breathing?
Is he breathing, Mama?
Very good evening. Welcome along to Crime Vlog Weekly. My name is Hartley, all the way in London. They call me Citizen Hartley. I'm not a police officer. I'm just a basic citizen like most of you. Not using the word basic as simple as that, but mainly I am not a policeman. I'm not a law enforcement officer. I just love crime. I love the crime stories around, especially up there in North America. And tonight, we have another one for you. This one is about the wife. She's been charged with her husband's death. He is a firefighter. It is claimed that she stabbed him through the heart. I'm going to give you the background. Also, I'm going to be giving you some of the clips in the court. The court case has started. It's been going now for approximately 4 or 5 days, and I'm going to be giving you the opening statements from both the lawyers, the prosecution, and the defense. So stick along with me right through to the end. I'd like to say a big thank you to all the returning subscribers each and every time. Love you guys, love you guys. Just keep it up. Hit the subscribe button, also the like button, and don't forget to share all my videos. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It has been a beautiful day over here in London, extremely hot, but we can't complain. We don't get much of these days over here. We don't get much of the hot days, but when it do get hot, it's extremely hot, and today was one of those days, possibly up around the 30s, probably 32 today. Hot day. So it looks as though August is going to be a good one. Let's hope it stays like that, but give us a little bit more wind. Okay, as I promised you, I'm going to give you the story of this firefighter and his wife. They have 2 kids, and we're also going to get some testimony from both of the kids. And what you also find out, the kids love their mother and father. It's unfortunate what actually happened. Okay, this crime story is about Christine Ricci, 46, allegedly fatally stabbed her 51-year-old husband. His name is Michael Ricci. This happened at 679 Moraine Street. Marshfield police received a 911 call just after 4:45 p.m. reporting a medical emergency at an address, and arrived along with emergency medical personnel to find Michael Ricci suffering from stab wounds. According to the statements, he was taken to South Shore Hospital in Weymouth, where he was pronounced dead. As I said earlier, the case has just opened. It's been going on for the last 3 or 4 days. As I said, I'm going to give you clips and video clips of the trial, and this would help you to make your mind up whether this lady is guilty of murder or whether or not it was abuse by her husband. You make your mind up just like the jury. I'll bring you all the facts as best as I can. Shannon Buckingham opened for the Commonwealth and telling the jurors that defendant Christine Ricci never got over her husband's extramarital affairs, and during one of their frequent arguments stabbed her husband to death with a kitchen knife. Defense attorney Joshua Wood, in his opening told jurors that Christine Ricci never intended to kill her husband and that their confrontation occurred within a 15-minute period, which she could not recall everything that happened because she was hysterical. Through in one statement, she told police her husband lunged at her and attacked her. The couple's 20-year-old daughter, Sophia Ricci, testified her parents' relationship was fraught with arguments, which her father divulged his affairs to her and her brothers. On the afternoon of January 2021, she was in her bedroom when she heard the two yelling. Then her mother called her and telling her to call 911. She found her father on the floor, her mother besides him. First, then I'll go into the defense opening statements.
In this case, you're going to hear about Christine and Michael Ricci. The Riccis lived in Marshfield. They have 3 kids. Angel is the oldest, and Angel is not Michael's biological child, but you'll hear from Angel that Michael was his dad. The middle son is Michael Jr., and the youngest child is Sophia. And you will hear from them during the course of this trial. You're going to hear about Michael. Michael grew up in Hyde Park. Michael was a military vet. He spent 22 plus years with the Boston Fire Department. You're going to hear about the defendant, Christine Ricci. She was, for all intents and purposes, a stay-at-home mom, but she also taught Zumba, and around the time of this incident, she was taking classes at Quincy College. The Ricci family was a seemingly happy suburban household. But, ladies and gentlemen, we never know what happens behind closed doors inside a household, do we? You'll hear throughout the course of this trial from people inside the house and outside the house about how the Ricci household changed over the course of time, how the defendant changed, how Michael changed. You hear about the major turning point in their marriage that occurred in the fall of 2018. Michael had an affair. It was a brief affair, but it was an affair with another woman, and the defendant knew or found out about it. For a short period of time, the decision was made that Michael was going to leave the marriage, possibly leave the household, but quickly the decision was made for them to stay together and work on their family and stay together as a family. Michael messed up, but from the time that he told the defendant about the affair, he did everything he could to try to make things right and keep his family together. He worked on himself, he went to AA, he worked on his relationship with his children and his wife. He did everything his wife asked him to do. The defendant, on the other hand, continuously talked and focused on the infidelity for over 2 years. For over 2 years, her inability to get over that affair increased. You will hear testimony throughout the course of this trial from witnesses about verbal and physical altercations by the defendant against Michael. You will hear witnesses describe how the defendant would control Michael. They will tell you about seeing black eyes, fat lips, scratches on his face, and a broken nose. You'll hear that the night in question, January 28th, 2021, is not the first time the defendant brought a knife to an argument. This affair was like a pot of water simmering on a stove. And over the period of time between 2018 and January of 2021, the defendant continued to turn up the heat on that pot by bringing up that affair over and over until that simmering pot of anger, jealousy, and control boiled over on January 28, 2021. So January 28, 2021, it's a wintry Thursday. There was still snow on the ground. Michael was home that day. You will hear that his work schedule was a work 24 hours on, get 2 days off, work 24 hours on, and get 4 days off. And so on this day, Michael was on the 4-day stretch of having some days off, so he was home. The defendant was home. Their daughter, Sophia, had gone to school and was home in the afternoon. Angel was at work that day. And during this period of time, Michael Jr. wasn't actually residing in the home, but he was close by and available. On this particular afternoon, Michael goes to Dunkin' Donuts in the afternoon, gets a coffee, comes home. He's doing some shoveling outside before coming into the house, meeting the defendant, his wife, in yet another argument. The children will testify and tell you that arguments were frequent in the household and that arguments were always about the same thing, the affair. On this particular day, Sophia will tell you that she could hear her parents arguing when she was up in her room after school, but that was pretty much normal for her at that point. On this particular day, it was particularly loud, and she did everything she could to try to tune them out. Until later in that afternoon, when her mother, the defendant, yelled her name, yelled for her to come down. Sophia comes down the stairs, goes into the area in between the dining room and the living area to find her dad on the floor and the defendant standing over him. The defendant tells her to call 911. Sophia calls 911. You're going to hear the 911. You're going to hear Sophia's testimony about what she recalls that day. The Marshfield police arrive at their home on Moraine Street. They're the first ones to arrive, you'll hear. And when they arrive, the defendant tells the first officers that Michael suddenly collapsed. So the officers that arrived begin to tend to him by giving him CPR, and almost a few minutes later, paramedics arrive from the Marshfield Fire Department, and they take over care of Michael, continuing with CPR, trying to resuscitate him and get him in a condition to take him to the hospital. When the paramedics put Michael into the back of the ambulance, they, again, try to stabilize him, and it's at that point where the paramedics discover, after cutting away his shirt, that Michael has a stab wound, a deep, penetrating stab wound in his chest. When they remove the clothing, you'll hear, they find another injury, another wound to the rear of his arm near his shoulder. The paramedics immediately advise the police, who are inside with the defendant, and it's at that point, and only that point, you'll hear, that the defendant tells the officers that she had been in an argument with her husband, with Michael. She tells him she was scared, she grabbed a knife to scare him, and that when he lunged at her, the knife just went in his chest. Throughout the course of this trial, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see those injuries. You're going to hear about those injuries. You're going to see pictures of Michael, how tall he was, how big he was, where those injuries were on his body. You'll hear that there's more than one stab wound. There's two, but there's in fact 3 injuries that are noted on his body. The stab wound to his chest, the wound to his shoulder or the back of his arm, and what will be described to you, I expect, as an incised wound, which is a large scratch along his back. You will see that there were 2 knives located in that house that day that had Michael's blood on the blade. The first was located on the floor by where his body lay, where he was laying when first responders first got to the scene, and one in a box on the dining room table with several other knives. You will see pictures of those knives. You will see pictures of the house and where those items were located when the police were at the house that particular night. You will hear from a medical examiner in this case more about that fatal chest wound and what the details of that wound, how deep it was, what kind of injury it caused, what damage it did to Michael's body, and what resulted in his death. We ask, ladies and gentlemen, that you listen carefully to the evidence and keep an open mind. And that's something you're going to hear us say, you'll hear the judge say, you'll hear everyone say it again and again throughout the course of this trial, but it is paramount in this type of a case, that you listen carefully and keep an open mind. And that you not forget that you, as a group, bring to this case your common sense and life experience when you evaluate the evidence. And we ask that you do that as you continue to listen to the evidence in this case. And the evidence will tell you what happened in the Ricci household that night on January 28th, 2021. In this case. And the evidence will tell you what happened in the Ricci household that night on January 28th, 2021. At the end of this case, we will return and ask that you find the defendant guilty of murder and assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, because the evidence will prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that she is in fact guilty of those crimes.
There you go. That was the prosecution opening statements there of the incident. Well, that's the theory. That is the theory from the prosecution. As we all know, there is always two sides to a story. So we're now going to hear from Joshua Wood. This is the defense lawyer. Listen to his opening statements, and as I said, listen carefully and make your mind up whether or not this was a straightforward murder or whether it was is classed as abuse, spousal abuse.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the defense. Attorney Wood.
Christine Ricci never intended to kill Michael Ricci on January 28, 2021, and the Commonwealth doesn't have any evidence to prove that she did. The argument that occurred that was just described to you, the confrontation that was just described to you, all of that information all happened during about a 15-minute, small 15-minute pocket between 4:30 and 4:45 on January 28, 2021. And every answer to every question that we have about Christine's intent, Michael's intent, Michael's last actions and Christine's actions are contained and sealed in that 15-minute pocket. And ladies and gentlemen, that's probably why the Commonwealth is going to spend such a small amount of time talking about that 15-minute period, because they want to distract you. Just described to you, all of that information all happened during about a 15-minute, small 15-minute pocket between 4:30 and 4:45 on January 28, 2021. And every answer to every question that we have about Christine's intent, Michael's last actions and Christine's actions are contained and sealed in that 15-minute pocket. And ladies and gentlemen, that's probably why the Commonwealth is going to spend such a small amount of time talking about that 15-minute period, because they want to distract you. Christine's words are really the only evidence that we have of what occurred during that 15-minute pocket. And those words, remember, were spoken in the moments after all of these events happened. It's true that she doesn't give a complete statement of everything that occurs, and as we go through the evidence in this case, and when I come back and talk to you at the end, I'm going to suggest to you, through reference to both the forensic evidence as well as putting together the statements, about what probably happened around and between the details of what it was that she said. When the police arrive, the evidence is going to be that Christine Ricci is absolutely beside herself. Absolutely beside herself. She is crying, she is heaving, she is hyperventilating. The first responders come to the scene and she can get almost nothing out. She says he collapsed, that comes out. The Commonwealth wants it to be the case that that means that she told some sort of misleading statement. The evidence is going to show that she gave an incomplete statement and that maybe she wasn't in a position where she even could give a complete statement. She was just too upset. After Michael Ricci's body is moved from the house out to the ambulance, there's going to be evidence from an officer by the name of Chris Martin, who's going to say that at that point they sat her in a chair and they asked her what happened. While the body is still out at the ambulance, while they're so-called discovering the stab wound that you just heard a moment ago. And the evidence is going to say that when she's confronted at that moment about what happened, she gives a little bit more detail, but she's still extremely upset. She's so upset, in fact, that she actually takes some medication to try to calm her down. But as she begins to say the details of the case, she mentions the knife, and she mentions the argument and the fact that it escalated. And that's going to be supported by the testimony of Sophia Ricci, who heard that escalation of the argument into a screaming match. And it's true, she does say, I held the knife out, and then at another point she does say he lunged at me, and at another point mentions being attacked. And I'm going to suggest to you that the evidence will be that even when Christine said those words, that wasn't everything that happened. And at that point, the evidence will show she may not have had a complete memory of what had just fully occurred. But Christine Ricci's words are the only direct evidence that you're going to have about what happened between 4:30 and 4:45 p.m. on January 28, 2021. They're the only eyewitness reports of what happened. And they don't at all support the story that the government just told you. And that is probably why they are going to spend the entire case discussing things that didn't occur during that period of time. I expect that they are going to parade a bunch of witnesses in, remote friends of Michael Sr., who are going to be allowed to offer their opinions about the defendant, that they are going to pick along a 2.5-year period, a series of isolated events, and try to string them together to create the most damning possible picture of who Christine Ricci is. And that they will do so because they hope that you will be so distracted by the question of whether Christine Ricci is the type of person that would commit this crime, that you'll forget that the real question is whether she actually did it. As I say, at the end of this case, we will hear forensic evidence. We will come back and we'll tell you a little bit more about what happened in January 28, 2021, in the absolutely critical 15-minute period. Talk about the mechanics and what's suggested. And a lot of it will be inference by inference, because we won't have that type of eyewitness testimony beyond someone's statements that was very, very affected by what had just happened to them. But what emerges from that is a very, very different picture altogether. Now, the Commonwealth wants you to tell you these stories about the past and about the affair. And it's true, there's going to be a story about an affair, and it's going to be a big part of the Commonwealth's case. This was an affair that took place in 2018. And a lot of the events that they're going to talk to you about physical confrontations, happened within just a couple of months of that event, maybe anywhere from a 6-month to 9-month period after that event. You're going to hear about other events that happened in the subsequent 1.5 years. Things like Michael going to AA, Christine supporting him in going to AA, him getting sober, him getting counseling, Ms. Ricci getting separate counseling, them going to couples counseling, them reaffirming their vows in Hawaii in 2019. And you're going to hear from all of the children, and although they're going to say that there was fighting still and there was a fair amount of marital discord, they're not going to describe the type of events that were occurring in 2018. But the Commonwealth wants to sort of string these things together from 2.5 years earlier to try to pretend that that says something about Christine Ricci in 2021. I'm going to ask you not to be distracted, to focus like a laser on the relevant period of 4:30 to 4:45 on January 28th, 2021. And I want you to be extra vigilant every single time the Commonwealth tries to distract you and talk to you about ancient history and tries to tell you about who Christine is and why you should believe bad things about her, and focus on what do they actually know about what happened on January 28th, 2021 between the hours of 4:30 and 4:45. And if at the end of the day, what you're left with is, I just don't know what happened, which is exactly where they are, then I'm going to ask you to find Ms. Ricci at the end of this case during closing not guilty.
His theory, the way the way he saw what happened, and obviously his is completely different from the prosecution. But we're going to hear the facts. We're going to hear directly from the son and the daughter. She'll be coming up next. Her name is Sophia. We'll be hearing from her. But it's going to be a difficult one. This particular case, I think we might have to run it into possibly 2 or 3 videos. We'll see how long we can run the part 1 for today, but we will definitely keep you informed of everything that's going on within this trial. If you haven't subscribed us yet, please do that now. Hit that just below the video. Just hit the subscribe button, also the like button, and of course share our videos with your friends and family. Okay, here's the daughter. Her name is Sophie. We're going to let you hear her statement for this particular case of Christine Ricci.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. In a loud, clear voice, can you please tell us your name and spell both your first name and your last name?
Sophia Ricci, SOPHIYA
Thank you. And Sophia, what is your date of birth?
05/22/04.
How old are you?
I'm 20 years old.
Okay. And where do you currently live?
I live at my house, 679 Moraine Street.
How long have you lived at that home?
Since I was 3.
And where did you live prior to that, if you know?
Rosendale.
And who do you currently live at that location with?
My brother, Angel.
And how old is Angel?
Angel is 27.
And do you work?
Yes, I do.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you do, Sophia?
I work at a dog kennel.
And so what kinds of responsibilities do you have there?
So I basically take the dogs in, out, clean up their messes, clean up bowls, basically clean and hang out with dogs.
And do you like your job?
Oh, I love it.
His name, just for the record again, his name?
Michael Ricci.
And that was senior, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And with Her Honor's permission, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm just approaching you with a photograph. I'm just going to ask you to take a look at that photograph and tell me if you recognize what it is.
Yes.
Or who it is.
My dad.
Okay, make sure you speak loudly, okay?
Yes, my father.
Okay. And is this a pretty fair and accurate picture of what he looked like?
Yes.
I'd ask that this be marked as the first exhibit and published, please.
Any objection?
No objection.
It'll be marked and admitted as Exhibit 1 and may be published.
Thank you. Exhibit 1 so marked.
Now the jurors see the electronics.
And this is your father?
Yes.
And did you have, what did you used to call him?
I just called him Dad.
Okay, and did he have any nicknames for you?
It would vary. Honey, sweetheart, sweetie.
Your Honor.
And do you know what your father did for work while you were growing up?
Yes, he was a firefighter.
Where was he a firefighter?
Boston.
And did he have any other jobs that you were aware of?
He was a sprinkler. He installed sprinklers in buildings.
And what was your relationship like with your father growing up, Sophia?
We were very close.
What kinds of things did you guys used to do?
We would go bowling, watch, go to the seawall, watch the waves, play baseball outside, sports, and watch movies and watch TV shows.
Was he around a lot growing up?
Yeah.
And based on your observations, did he have a fairly similar relationship with your brothers?
Yeah. It was obviously different because I was the daughter, but he had a close relationship with my brothers too.
And what was your relationship like with your mom growing up? Was it close as well?
We were very close.
Sophie, I'm going to draw your attention back to a date of January 28th of 2021. Do you remember where you were during the daytime hours?
I was at school,
And what school was that?
Marshfield High School.
And do you remember what grade you were in?
I was a sophomore.
And was this during COVID times?
No, this was before COVID.
Okay. And do you recall what hours you were at school?
I do not recall what hours.
Do you know what roughly time you would get home every day from school?
1:47.
Was that the 1:47 was the bell at school and then you would leave, or 1:47 you'd walk in your home?
1:47, the bell.
Okay. And how would you get home?
The bus.
And approximately how far away is your school from your home?
5 minutes.
It was a quick ride?
Yeah.
Okay. And on this particular day, did you take the bus home?
Yes.
Okay. And before leaving for your school day, anything unusual in the home?
No.
Everything seemed pretty normal to you?
Yeah.
And when you got home, what did you do?
I went up to my room.
And can you describe your home?
So if you walk through the front door, there's a fireplace. I call the fireplace room. And then when you walk up the stairs, there's my room. And then walk down a hallway, there's my brother's room, the bathroom, and my parents' room.
So where was Angel's bedroom?
Angel's bedroom was in the basement.
And so he converted the basement basically into a bedroom?
Yeah.
And then were any bedrooms on the first floor? So the remainder of the bedrooms were upstairs, correct?
Yeah.
And where was your parents' bedroom in relationship to your bedroom?
They were across from my room.
So just right across the hallway?
Yeah.
And what about your brother, Mike? We'll call him Michael Jr.
He was across too.
Okay. Were there any other bedrooms upstairs?
No.
Okay. And when you got home, you indicated you went to your bedroom, is that right?
Yes.
Did you see anybody when you first came in?
I do not remember.
Okay. And do you know if anybody was home?
I think my mom was home.
And do you recall seeing her on the first floor when you walked in?
I do not recall.
Okay. Do you remember speaking to her at all before you went to your room?
I do not remember.
Okay. And may I approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask you to take a look at a photograph and tell me if you recognize what it is.
Yes,
What do you recognize that to be?
that's my house.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of how it appeared back in 2021?
Yes.
Okay, I'd ask that this be marked as the next exhibit and published as well, please.
Any objection? It'll be marked and admitted as Exhibit 2 and may be published.
In the home. With Her Honor's permission, may the witness get up and just point to different areas that she just spoke about?
She may.
Thank you. Sophia, if you can. I don't know if we have a pointer or not, but just with your hand, if you can just show us what we're looking at here in terms of take us through the front door and tell us where the different rooms that you described are, please.
So, this is the fire room where the fireplace was, and then,
when you walk up the stairs, this was my room, this was the living room, and these two windows were my parents' room.
And then what about Michael Jr.?
Michael Jr.'s window was on the side.
Okay. And the kitchen, where's that?
It's in the middle of the house.
So when you walk in that red door, is the kitchen ahead of you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You could.
You walked in the door, your first memory right now is that you went right to your bedroom, is that right?
Yes.
Is that typically what you would do when you got home from school?
Yes.
And do you recall if your parents' bedroom door was open or closed?
I do not recall.
Okay. At some point, did you become aware that somebody else arrived home?
I do not remember.
At some point, did you hear voices?
Yes.
And where were those voices coming from?
The living room.
And whose voices were they?
My mom, my dad's.
And what tone of voice were you hearing from your mom?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Well, I'll ask a different question. That wasn't a good one. I'm sorry. So you were upstairs and you could hear your parents downstairs, is that right?
Yes.
And how loudly were they speaking?
Not too loud.
But loud enough to hear?
Yeah, loud enough so I could hear from upstairs.
Do you have a television in your bedroom?
Yes, I do.
And is it typically on when you go in?
Yes.
So you had the television on this day, is it fair to say?
Yes.
And you heard them downstairs, right?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that their voices were elevated enough that you heard them?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall hearing yelling?
Yes.
And who did you hear yelling from?
My mom.
And did you hear any words she was saying?
No.
Was this alarming to you, or was this kind of your life?
It wasn't alarming to me.
Was not alarming, and why was that, Sophia?
I was used to it.
Okay. And when you say you were used to it, was that how things had been always, or had they turned into your new normal at some point?
It turned into my new normal. It wasn't always.
So when you were a little girl and up until you were maybe 14 or so, 15, were things not like that in the home?
Yes.
Okay. And were you able to, do you typically get involved when you hear your mom yelling and an argument going on, or do you kind of stay away from it?
Not typically, but there was sometimes I would get involved.
And on this particular occasion, what did you do?
I didn't get involved.
Did you stay in your room?
Yeah, I stayed in my room until I heard my name.
Okay. And in the past, well, let me ask you this. How often would you hear your parents arguing in the 2 years leading up to January 28th of 2021?
Your Honor, objection with regard to foundation. That time frame is a 2-year period,
All right.
2.5.
Is that the foundation? Were you living in the home in 2019?
Yes, I was.
And during 2019, was there a notable, were your parents arguing more often then?
Yes.
And how often were they arguing in 2019?
I do not recall how often it was.
Was it fairly often?
Yeah, it was fairly often.
And what about in 2020? Were you living in that same home?
Yes, I was.
And was it similar to what you just described as happening, arguing often?
Yes.
And the early 2021 leading up to the day we're talking about, was it the same then as well?
Yes.
And were the arguments typically about one thing in particular?
Not all arguments were one thing.
What do you recall the arguments being about?
I don't recall all of the arguments, but I just remember them being different things. It wasn't just one thing.
Would your mom ask your father questions about something?
Yes.
Objection to the form of these questions. These, I think, need to be open-ended.
Right, I'll rephrase. Thank you. Sophia, what, if anything, would you hear your mom consistently asking your father about?
I do not recall.
Do you recall who, if anyone, would your mother bring up during the course of the arguments?
I do not recall.
May I have one moment, please, Ronna? Yes. Actually, the day of these events that we're here about today, on January 28th, 2021, do you remember being interviewed by the police about what had happened?
Yes, I do.
And is it fair to say that your memory then was probably a little bit better than it is now?
Yes.
Would it refresh your memory to see what a transcript of what you said about these arguments?
Yeah. Yes.
May I approach? You may. Page
Can I see
one.
the page?
Yep, page 115. Sophie, I'm just going to ask you to take a look at a transcript of the interview you had with the Marshfield Police. Specifically for the record, it's page 1-15. I'm going to ask you to read to yourself, so not out loud, excuse me, lines 12 to 20. Actually, lines 12 to the end of the page. And when you're done reading, take your time, just look up so I know you're done, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Fresh, as we say.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so I'll just ask you again, do you remember typically what your parents would argue about?
About the drinking,
And what else?
the affair.
And the drinking, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions about that. Do you recall how often your father would drink
Every day.
and what he would drink?
Beers.
And is it fair to say he would not be drinking, as far as you know, while he was a firefighter, right?
Yeah.
When he would come home, would he have a few?
Yes.
Okay. And what kinds of things would you hear your mother saying about the affair when she would be questioning him or asking him?
I don't remember what she would ask about. I just remember like what it was about, but I don't remember what she would ask.
Okay. And is it fair to say that between the drinking and the affair, those were typically what the arguing was about?
Yes.
Okay. And other than I don't want to categorize it as yelling, but other than the loud voices you heard on the date of January 28th, 2021, what, if any, other sounds did you hear downstairs?
I heard movement and banging.
Movement and what?
Banging.
Banging?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know what the banging was?
No, I did not.
Okay. Where did you stay while you heard them? Is it fair to say they were yelling?
Yes.
So where were you during the yelling and the banging?
In my room.
At some point, did you leave your room, Sophia?
Yes, I did.
And why did you leave your room?
I heard my name being called.
Who called your name?
My mom.
And other than calling your name, did she yell anything else to you at that time?
No, she just called my name for me to come downstairs.
And what did her voice sound like?
She sounded very, panicked.
Okay. And did you do as you were told and come downstairs?
Yes, I did.
And when you came downstairs, could you describe what you saw?
My dad was laying down on the floor.
Okay. And when you say he was laying down on the floor, could you describe where he was when you saw him?
Where he was, or
Where on the where in the home he was on the floor?
he was in the living room near the dining room table.
And was he laying down on his back or on his front?
His back.
And what, if anything else, did you observe about him as he lay there?
I don't recall.
Do you remember if his eyes were open or closed?
No, I do not.
And were you able to speak to him when he was on the floor?
No.
Okay. Did you see any? What, if any, injuries did you see?
No, I didn't see anything.
Did you see anything in your father's hands as he lay there?
No.
Where was your mom in relationship to where your father was laying on the ground?
She was right next to him.
Was there anything in her hands?
No.
And when you got downstairs, did you have a conversation with your mom about why your father was on the ground?
No.
Did she tell you, aside from a conversation, did she make any statements to you about why he was on the ground?
No.
And what was the very next thing that happened?
She told me to call 911.
And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
And what phone did you use?
I used my phone.
It's like a cell phone?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you even know what to tell 911?
Can you explain that question?
I'll rephrase it. You picked with her honor's permission. May we just very briefly approach? Yes, thank you. And it may be played.
Thank you. Exhibit 3, Summer.
911, trying to go to with the emergency.
My dad is injured on the ground. I don't know what's happened, but can you please send an ambulance or something?
Okay, where are you located?
679 Lorraine Street.
Say again?
679 Lorraine Street.
679 Marine Street?
Yes.
Okay, is he breathing?
Is he breathing, Mom? He's breathing.
Okay, stay on the line for me. I'm going to transfer the ambulance, all right?
Okay.
Fire rescue, where's your emergency?
Hi, my dad is on the floor and he's breathing and he's picking up. And can you just please get the ambulance?
What's your address?
679 Marine Street.
679 Marine Street. How old are you?
16.
Okay, how old is your dad?
My dad is 50.
50. You said he fell?
Yeah, he's on the ground unconscious right now.
Is he breathing?
I don't know if he's breathing, but can you just please send an ambulance?
Okay, stay on the line. I'm going to get him started your way, okay?
Okay, he's breathing, but can you just please come here?
And 382. Main Street. 8-year-old male. 679 Main Street. Hello, you still there? You with your dad right now?
Yeah, my mom's a little bit.
Did he fall or did he just pass out all of a sudden?
I don't know. I'm just getting down to the little man could fall off.
Okay, and he's not alert, he's not talking?
No, he's completely out.
Okay, and he's not breathing normally?
No.
Okay. Do you know CPR?
I don't know that.
Okay, he's on the floor though right now? He's not on his bed or anything? Okay, you said your mom's there? Can I
No, she can't. She's okay now.
Okay, because they're on the way, but I can give you instructions for CPR to help them, okay? They're on their way, but I can give you instructions to help them, okay? One to five on dispatching, engine 3, FIQ, 679 Ryan Street, on medical, still on the 15. Is he on his back?
Yeah, no, he's on his side.
Okay. Can you have your mom roll him onto his side?
He's already on his side.
Or on his back?
No. Oh, yeah. Mom, roll him on his back. On his back.
Then is he on his back now?
Yeah, he's on his back.
Your mom, they're on their way. I'm gonna give you instructions to start CPR, okay? Okay.
There you go. Very dramatic moment there for the daughter of Christine Ricci. She was the one in the house on the day when her father was stabbed, allegedly stabbed by his wife. Very dramatic moment in this 911 call, I should say. I'm saying 999 because, as I said, I'm over here in the UK and we use 999 for the emergency service. Over there, up there in North America, it's 911. So, got it right, 911. As I said, very dramatic moment there. A lot of it. I'm sure by now you've got grips of what the case is all about. But now you're actually hearing the facts. Had his turn to cross with the daughter. He was very gentle, very light with it. Obviously, he could not be too harsh on her because obviously she loves her mum, she loves her dad, same with the brothers. So it's very difficult for the children to be given evidence against their mother. And it wasn't easy, it was pretty hard. Also then for day 2, the jurors heard from Chris Martin, a patrolman who described Christine Ricci as being frantic when he arrived on the scene. He said she was hyperventilating and yelling. Michael Ricci was on the floor, lying face up on his back. He observed a 5-inch steak knife by his feet. Seeing no obvious injuries to the victim, he assumed he had suffered a medical-related event, and first responders began performing chest compressions. Janine Bouchard, the mistress of Michael Ricci, testified that their 6-week affair occurred in 2018. She testified that at the time of the affair, she thought Christine and Michael were separated. About a month after Michael abruptly ended the affair, she received a text message from Christine telling her to stay away from Michael. Bouchard claimed Christine showed up at her house on 2 separate occasions, and in January 2020, she called police and Christine left. As you've heard earlier, there was a 6-week affair between Mr. Ricci, the firefighter, with this younger lady, and she actually appeared in court to give evidence against Mr. Ricci's wife. So I'm going to play a couple of those clips for you.
And at some point after learning about the state of his marriage, did your friendship turn into something more?
Yes.
And when was that?
The end of August, very beginning of September.
And did it turn into a romantic relationship?
Yes.
And how long did that last?
It ended Columbus Day weekend, so maybe 6 weeks.
And how did it end?
He had texted me that I think Sunday morning and said, "We're over. I need to end this. I will call you later. Please don't say anything. Just listen."
And did you respond?
I don't remember. I think I just said, okay.
Were you confused?
Yes.
And after that initial text from Michael Ricci, did you hear again from him that weekend?
No.
Did you hear again?
Oh, yes. Oh, he texted, then he called later that evening.
And this was Columbus Day weekend of 2018?
Yes.
Which would have been in October, correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did he say when he called you?
Basically, we're over. You never meant anything to me. It was very scripted.
Drawing your attention, ma'am, to end of November, beginning of December of 2018, what, if any, missed calls did you receive?
Those were the calls.
From whom?
In the middle of the night, Michael's phone.
How many times did his phone number call you?
At least 7 or 8.
And this was approximately 2 months after your relationship ended with him. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Did you call back that number after all of those missed calls?
No.
At some point, did you finally pick up the phone after the 7 or 8 missed calls?
Yes.
And who was on the other line?
Michael.
And what did he say to you?
Again, I don't love you. I didn't love you. I love my wife.
Okay. And how did he sound?
Very monotone.
Overall, how did he sound?
Very monotone.
And what did you say?
I just said, okay. She knocked on the door and I opened it and she said, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Seriously?" And then I realized it was her. So I stepped outside. She said, "I need to talk to you." So I stepped outside on the deck.
Was anyone else home?
I don't think so.
And how did she appear, namely Christine?
At first, started yelling and screaming. And then,
Yep.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. So at first she was yelling and screaming. Was she, what was she yelling and screaming?
How could you do this to me? That was my husband. And should I continue?
Did she say other things initially as well?
She was kind of all over the place. There was yelling and screaming. There was crying. There was calmness. I had explained that I was told that their marriage was over, that they both mutually agreed to separate, that she was seeing somebody else. She wasn't wearing her rings. I told her I was truly sorry for my part, that I wish that I had waited for them to truly be legally divorced before anything moved on in our relationship. And, you know, I can't take it back, but I do apologize and I wish them happiness.
And how long was your conversation with Christine Ricci on that date, if you recall?
I'd say at least an hour.
And how did the conversation end?
She said she forgives me and she asked if she could give me a hug.
Did you hug?
Yes.
Okay, I've been looking at Christine Ricci throughout this trial, throughout this particular trial, and she looks and seems to be a very nice lady. She's composing herself very well in court. She did have many issues before on the pre-trial. She actually collapsed in court. I think I've got a clip of that, which I'll play for you a little bit later. But looking at her now, her hair seems to be receding quite a lot. She seemed to have lost quite a lot of hair, but I can imagine the high stress levels she is going through. And I would hate to see this lady spending the rest of her life in prison. But as we know, someone did die. Her husband died, stabbed to death, stabbed right through the heart. And this might be just the way the jury is looking at it. Straightforward murder. They might not take into consideration that the husband was abusive. So I'm not sure which way it's going to go, but let's hope it goes the right way. I do have a clip of the closing arguments by the defense attorney, Mr. Wood. I'm going to play that for you now.
She goes to that drawer and she grabs a knife. I'm going to suggest she grabs this knife right here. What's been marked as exhibit number 23, what was marked by forensics as 1-4. And she holds it to herself as if maybe to her wrist, maybe to her neck. When Michael sees that during the argument, he gets upset and he runs into that room from the living room, dining room. And he tackles her. And as he's tackling her, she hits the ground. She still has that knife in her hand as she's plunging that knife towards her own rib cage, just below the breast. And Michael's arms are around her. And that is the first stab wound. She might not at this point even know that she stabbed him. But he knows. All of his adrenaline is going, and now he's focused. He gets up, and maybe he's not gentle with her at all, and it's understandable why he wouldn't be under those circumstances. He's got pain in his shoulder, and he realizes that this is an out-of-control situation. He gets control of that arm. He might grab her to do it. He rips the knife out of her hand and runs over to that drawer, and he grabs all the knives in the drawer. And he runs over to that dining room table, and he throws the knives into the box on top of the dining room table. And then he turns around to see what's going on. By this point, Christine has gotten up off the ground, and she's gone over to that drawer, and she's grabbed another knife, this time a steak knife. This knife right here. This time she's holding the knife to her body, and he goes over, and he starts, this time he doesn't make a mistake. He made the first time, he grabs her arm first, controls the arm with the knife, and they start moving around with that knife. And as he tries to twist that arm to get that knife out, the two of them begin to turn with Christine's back right in that doorway, right in front of that step leading down into the combined living room basement. And as she pulls away to get that knife back, the two of them stumble off that ledge onto the floor, and the knife is still between them. He falls in, right into the knife, penetrating the center of his chest, with such force that the soft tissues in Michael's body were compressed, such that the knife wound was longer than the actual blade of the knife causing the wound. At this point, Christine is underneath Michael, The knife is between them, and Michael is on top of her. She is beside herself. She rolls him off of her onto his side, and she gets up, still holding that knife, and drops it, and turns and screams for Sophia to call 911.
In cases like this, I like to see when the defendant take the stand and give evidence of exactly what happened, make it clear to the jury. But in Christine Ricci's case, I think we can excuse her because of her nervousness, and she seemed to have some sort of stress problem. I think the prosecution lawyers would have made mincemeat of her. So she actually declined in going on the stand. But if you have a look at the clip of, well, in the pre-trials days, this is what happened.
The Commonwealth versus Christine Ricci.
Christine Ricci bent over and trembling as she entered the courtroom. The 46-year-old Marshfield woman clearly having trouble standing as the charge was read.
One complaint charging you in the town of Marshfield on January 28th of 2021. You are charged with murder.
Moments after the arraignment started, she fell to the ground, accused of killing her Boston firefighter husband, Michael Ricci.
Your Honor, Ms. Ricci is having a medical emergency.
The courtroom was clear.
There you go. That was Christine Ricci when she collapsed in court a couple of years ago. As I said, no lawyer, no defense lawyer would want the defendant to go into the stands in that type of condition. She's very nervous, obviously still in shock of what actually happened to her husband, and she hasn't got over it as yet. As I said, they did say there seem to be mental issues between both of them. They both had issues, both Christine Ricci and Michael Ricci. I do have the closing arguments by the prosecution lawyer. I'm going to play that for you now.
But from the time that he told the defendant about the affair, he did everything he could to try to make things right and keep his family together. He worked on himself, he went to AA, he worked on his relationship with his children and his wife. He did everything his wife asked him to do. The defendant, on the other hand, continuously talked and focused on infidelity for over 2 years. For over 2 years, her inability to get over that affair increased.
Don't forget, guys, if you have any comments, please drop them down below. Let me know which way you're thinking. Do you think she's guilty or not guilty? We are coming to the end. This is all the closing arguments going on at the moment. So keep listening.
Jealousy and rage that consumed her was to put an end to the very person who caused that pain. She did so by stabbing Michael Ricci intentionally in his heart and then stabbed him again in his back. Cut his back, and I suggest to you, he injured his hands trying to defend himself from that armed woman with a knife filled with rage. Ladies and gentlemen, part of your jobs is to look at the evidence, and what's in evidence is very different than what defense counsel just spent 15 minutes of your precious time speculating about. What is? What is there not evidence? What's evidence is your memories of what those witnesses testified to. What's evidence, ladies and gentlemen, are these knives, text messages, scene videos, the state of affairs in the house, and Michael Ricci's injuries created by Christine Ricci. That's evidence, ladies and gentlemen, from so many people, hearing and telling you about so many injuries, black eyes, scratches, bloody nose, bloody lip. This went on for 2+ years. Michael Ricci became Christine Ricci's human punching bag. She took out her anger, aggression, embarrassment, jealousy, and rage on the man that she supposedly loved so much that had cheated on her for 6 weeks.
So which way are you guys leaning? Guilty or not guilty? I would say not guilty myself, but as I said earlier, the husband died. She had a knife in her hand. She could have run away. And I think that's what the jury is going to be looking at. Did she have a chance to back away from what was going on? And possibly yes. So this is where I think it might come down as a guilty verdict against her. Let's hope not. The jury is now out for deliberation. Let's hope they come back pretty quick with a decision. Let's hope it's not a 2 or 3 day decision. The quicker they come back, I think it's going to turn out to be a not guilty verdict.
What say you, Madam Forelady, as to indictment number 2183CR00153 on offense number 001, wherein the defendant, Christine Ricci, is charged with the crime of murder? Is she guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Guilty of what?
Murder in the second degree.
Thank you. As to offense number 002, wherein the defendant, Christine Ricci, is charged with the crime of assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. Is she guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Your Honor, may the verdict be affirmed.
Yes, they may.
Thank you. Members of the jury, hearken to your verdict as the court has so recorded it. You, upon your oath, do say that the defendant, Christine Ricci, is guilty of murder in the second degree on indictment number 2183CR00153, offense number 001. So say you, Madam Forelady.
Guilty.
So say you, all members of the jury.
Guilty.
You further, upon your oath, do say that the defendant, Christine Ricci, is guilty on indictment number 2183CR00153 on offense number 002 on the charge of assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. So say you, Madam Forelady.
Guilty.
So say you, all members of the jury.
Guilty.
Thank you. Your Honor, the verdict has been recorded and affirmed.
Jurors, you may be seated.
Well, there you go, guilty on all charges. As I said earlier, it's sad to see her being put away for at least possibly 20 to 30 years. But someone did die, her husband died, killed in this unfortunate situation, loved by both kids, mother and father. Now they haven't got a father and they haven't got a mother. Because she's going to be away for a very, very long time. Which way did you vote? Let me know. Please drop it in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for joining me each and every time on my crime videos right here on Crime Vlog Weekly, based over here in London, UK. Okay, well, that's it from me. I'm going to see you on the next video. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thank you very, very much.